All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Sales Vitamin Podcast, where every edition is some professional development for you from a sales standpoint. And today we have got a great guest, Yvon Demosthenes. He is the CEO of HamiltonDemo. It's a recruiting firm, talent acquisition. So we're going to talk a lot today about talent and people, which drives our industry and drives sales. So we are excited to have Yvon on today. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me.
Good. So Cincinnati, where you're from? Cincinnati Bearcat?
Yeah, Bearcat. Yes, sir. Go Cats.
That's right. They're having a pretty good weekend. That's right. They are. They're having a good year this year. We'll give everybody just kind of the quick high level of what you're doing at HamiltonDemo, the recruitment firm, and talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah. So, John, if you don't mind, I always like to start off by saying that I was born in Haiti.
Yes, sir.
And, Haitian came over to this country, to America. I'm more American than anything, but came over when I was 6 months old and found my way to Cincinnati, and through some travels and some experiences in corporate America, found myself in the talent acquisition space. And after some years of selling to Fortune 500 companies, enterprise organizations, organizations from 2,500 employees all the way to 1 million at Walmart, decided to go out on my own. And so started my own boutique shop where my partner and I, who is, his name is Sean Hamilton. He is an Air Force veteran. We were really motivated to make sure that our company was a designated organization and decided to become a certified veteran-owned company, and really wanted to focus on the clients and relationships that I had built over the years and continue providing them with consultation, programs around projects, and really helping them find and identify individuals who can come on board and hit the ground running, help those organizations thrive on all levels. And during that time too, before creating HamiltonDemo, really got an opportunity to grow my passion in diversity as well. So one of the things I get excited about when I meet companies and individuals within talent acquisition is to discuss diversity recruitment as well, diversity executive placement, etc. So I'm a people person. I like to think of myself as a people person. So being able to feel an organization's culture, being able to get a sense for what will make someone successful there, not just X's and O's and behind the desk, but also shaking hands, relating with others in the organization, thriving in those cultures really, I think, differentiates HamiltonDemo from other places.
Yeah, you talk about, I know you do executive search, but the diversity recruiting, talk about that for a little bit, because I think it's so important right now. I mean, if especially right now and what we're going through, and but it's one thing for a company to say, well, we're a diverse company, we have a very diverse background. But I think from where your chair, where you're sitting, how do you define a company that's really diverse and a company that is really committed to being diverse? What really sets them apart?
John, that is a great question. So actually, it's almost as if I wrote that question for you and you asked me.
Yeah.
So that is the first thing. I've had the pleasure of being with companies that really want to exceed diversity expectations, not only from within, but externally as well. And so that's the first question I ask them once they tell me their desires about growing their diversity culture within their organization and trying to become a more diverse organization. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to find individuals that can bring their deep diversity and their backgrounds to the organization and help that organization grow. So the first thing we need to do is define what each organization means in a diversity context, right? So if you go from company to company, or if you're even in a boardroom and you go around the table, each person, each organization will probably have a different definition of what that is. So it can be race, which is usually the first thing people think of.
Right.
It could be sex, cultural, religious, regional, socioeconomic, LGBTQ. Also, there's veterans are part of this
Okay.
discussion as well,
Yeah.
and their family members. We have a wonderful veteran family in this country where a lot of our veterans have traveled all over the world and seen some great things. I mean, there's no better training than traveling for your work, right? And your
Yeah.
family members are usually on the coattails of that. So there's really that's really the first step is when they want to do it, let's sit down and talk about what that means to you, what you're actually trying to attract to your organization, what groups, what populations. Let's look at that demographic and how we can find those individuals for you. Once we define it, things get a little easier for us, right? This journey is truly a marathon. It's not a sprint. But once we define it, then we have the opportunity to measure success as well. We've got
Right.
a mark to grow from. I think everybody realizes that once you spell it out. So
And I think it's important too. How does being a diverse organization or committed to trying to be a diverse organization, how does that result from a bottom line standpoint? What do you see? Is there a difference? Is there a performance improvement in those companies that you see are more diverse in the workforce? That's interesting to me, because if we're going to have a diverse workforce, how important is that to the bottom line?
yeah. So John, it's very easy to go online and search what you just asked.
Yeah,
There are multiple studies on how diverse organizations perform better on multiple levels than those that are not diverse, right? There's studies, articles, everything out there. And as a matter of fact, you will find that those organizations that are in the Fortune 500 that usually stay in the upper echelon of our corporate world, our global corporate world, are usually committed to diversity on a level that others are trying to trail behind them, right?
right,
And they're really setting the pace. I mean, think about it. We talked about GE, you talk about Amazon. Um, you know, these organizations, they know that they can't stop doing it. They're committed to it. They're always trying to improve. They don't rest on their laurels. And another example that I'd like to share with you a story is as I was going through my MBA years and years ago, talking about diversity. I had a professor who was very close to Toyota at the time, but he really liked to speak about diversity and its impact on organizations. So I started looking around me, not only in the classroom, but in other settings. And I started noticing on in just my personal experience too, whenever there were group activities or group projects or anything where there was one set of individuals and another set of individuals working on a similar or competing project, I started really to notice those groups that had a better mix of people usually did better, right?
right.
And I've continued to see that in my professional and personal life too. So the group that had if there were 4 or 5 people and you had 2 guys and 2 girls and they all looked different versus the group that sat at the table that all looked the same and they were all the same sex, that that group almost always performed better. As a matter of fact, even in the school settings,
Yeah,
in leadership training, those groups that they were friends, they were tight knit, but they all looked alike, versus the group that came from different places and all looked different, had different experiences. The result was the same too. That those is almost like a little microcosm of the world itself.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very interesting. But from a recruitment standpoint, you talk about executive recruiting and diversity. what's changed over, let's just say, the last 5 to 10 years? What are the big changes that you've seen in the executive recruiting and the process?
Yeah. So, couple things. Technology,
Yeah.
right? We've got technology is so huge. When I first got into the space, I share with people oftentimes the way I would get my meetings is these HR leaders would would need help with Outlook, right? They just got an email.
Yeah.
We're going way back, right? But I would offer my help, and they'd give me 30 minutes to an hour to chat and talk about what I was there to offer. So we'd barter in that sense. So technology has really changed things. Even the platforms that we use. LinkedIn was just starting out, right?
Right.
It came on board right after. We talked about Monster being the big powerhouse at the
Yeah.
time. Now there's so many job boards, you can't count them all.
Yeah.
And so technology is really, really big. And there's a lot of niches to that as well. That helps. Some of them thrive better than others,
Right.
and more companies are becoming aware of not just diversity, but where the different groups that they're looking for, where they kind of play online as well. So that's a big difference. They're more aware. There's more desires. There's more of a desire to have a strategy to go after those diverse candidates.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I think with that awareness too, it's very important for these companies and their talent acquisition departments to find organizations like HamiltonDemo that can easily create pipelines to those niche sites, to those organizations, to those associations that can create that pipeline directly to those companies as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, just how it's evolved in technology. Obviously, I can see where that's played a huge point. What are companies looking for now that you see from your chair versus maybe what they weren't looking for in the past? So is it the hard skills? Is it the soft skills? Or at that level, at that executive level, uh, what are companies looking for that you've seen that really kind of, if you're going to have three things, you better have these three?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if it's anything that they're looking specifically when they look for an individual or an executive, as much as really finding someone who can fit in their culture. Especially when the higher you get up the chain all the way up to the C-suite, that becomes more and more important.
Right.
Um, when you're looking for a sales leader, and you have a team of anywhere from 4 to 8 or 10, or however the number of salespeople underneath you that you're managing, they're becoming very, very aware that the relationship between those individuals and how the company is run, and that sales culture is very important. When
Yeah.
you're looking for a VP in commerce, again, how that VP relates to the other executives or those around him is becoming more and more important. They're definitely not looking for someone to just plug in anymore. I think there was a little bit of that. It was more of when I started, it was more of, hey, come on board now. You're going to have to change,
Yeah.
right? Right. Now there's more of an awareness of a cultural fit as well.
Yeah, that's a huge piece, that culture fit. I can see that, because if you put someone in and then they have those skill sets, but they don't fit the culture, then that could be an issue.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I worked with a client, and a few years back, we become friends. But a few years back, we had a very interesting conversation with each other, and it was along these lines too. And as I was looking for the right fit for her, she mentioned about a candidate that we were talking about, that she wasn't convinced that that person was going to be able to play the game in her organization.
Right.
She emphasized that within the organization, you get points. You get quality points for playing the game. And again, what she meant is, going through the process, the internal, the nonverbal processes, the psychological processes within the organization.
Yeah.
Going up the hierarchy in a certain way, and you got points for playing the game that way.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that's developed more and more, and companies are becoming more conscious of it.
Do you see a trend in the generalist versus the specialist, or do you see it going the other way, a lot more specialist versus the generalist?
Yeah, for me personally, I haven't really seen a trend one way or the other. And my business really counts on relationships that I've built over the 17 years that I've been in the space.
Right.
Right. So that helps out a lot. And there's already an understanding of how I work and HamiltonDemo works.
Yeah.
So that helps, that lends itself well to the relationship as well.
So if I'm let's just say I'm person ABC, and I'm thinking about getting in the market. I'm thinking about, I'm gonna search for a job, or I need to look at a placement company. I kind of compare it to getting my house ready to sell. There's a lot of things you need to do. So what do you, HamiltonDemo, how do you teach people to, or what are the key things they kind of really need to do high level to get their house, I'm saying house ready to sell, or for them ready to market themselves into the job field?
Yeah, again, technology comes in. LinkedIn is the very first thing, right?
Right.
Uh, I think it's huge anymore. And I think it goes, at times I do some project work,
Yeah.
and it never surprises me how often I hear somebody, one of my contacts, they'll go out to Facebook or they'll go out to LinkedIn just to get a peek, right? So
Yeah.
that online presence is truly very important. As a matter of fact, and when it comes to LinkedIn, I find that you usually have different categories of people. Those that are very minimal or don't really do a lot on LinkedIn, those that do a whole bunch, very robust
Yeah.
site, and others that are really kind of in the middle where they're not really giving you the minimum. They're just giving you just enough to
Yeah.
pique your interest. So I think that's really the sweet spot. I think there's very few people who are able to have that super robust site and be like the top 1% of the LinkedIn and platform, which is great.
Yeah.
But I think when you can pique a recruiter or a search firm's interest, that really plays well. Like putting your certification on there, letting them know where you are now, but maybe giving them a little idea where you came from. Right? That kind of projects someone who is ascending in their career. They're a rising star. Uh,
Yeah.
Things of that nature. Associating yourself with other groups. And so I think that's really always the first thing. Also, if you're, I always recommend to those that are close to me, if they can afford it, and if they're in a position to always look into getting a coach to
Uh,
coach them through the process, right?
yeah.
Sometimes searching and getting yourself prepared for an opportunity, it is pretty daunting, right? It's like a whole other job. And imagine if you've got another job and you're looking for a job, right?
Right. Right.
So you can use a coach, and a coach that can help you with the interview process, a coach that can keep you focused and not like veer away or get distracted by other opportunities that may or may not be viable, things of that nature. Uh, Dusting off your resume, right? And maybe making some tweaks there, giving you another eyeball. So I always recommend that when I can for individuals as well.
Do you see the social side of it? Where do you see the industry going? Your talent industry from the social media standpoint, is that driving all the changes you've seen? And is that taking away some of the face-to-face interaction, or is there still a blend there?
Yeah, you know what? John, that's I'll try to answer that because technology, I think, like I mentioned before, is really changing
Yeah.
uh, everything that we've known and how things are today. And I think the generalists and the specialists both, as we mentioned before, the generalists are really definitely they've never really been uh, true fans or really motivated to source and go through the process, right?
Right.
So more and more, you're seeing companies try to automate, and I think that's really uh, is kind of reinforcing the disconnect sometimes when you're connecting with candidates. You
Yeah.
know, you get this big organization and they have to post a job or market a job, promote it somewhere. So they're just going to scrape it. Well, we all know if you put a job description in one place, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to resonate on another platform
Right.
or with another group. So I think really that's really kind of hindered the connection that organizations need to have with these candidates because let's be honest,
Yeah.
all these things that are changing, we can talk forever, but to provide an ideal candidate experience is really key to finding someone to come on board and feel like they're coming into an organization that they can have an immediate impact with, right? If
Right.
that experience isn't ideal, from finding that job and reading it to connecting in a way that they feel that there's an immediate connection to the actual interview process. um, you know, you're definitely going to have people that are going to go through it or push through it, but
Right.
I think it's a different candidate that is truly motivated to, like, you know, wide-eyed and smiling and excited about what's in front of them and the opportunity that's presented to them.
How important or how crucial is it, do you feel, that the candidates look at the situation almost like they're interviewing the employer? There's so much information out there, and I think that goes back to the culture. You can find out a lot about the culture of a company now online and by
Yeah.
talking to people, right?
Right, right. Well, I mean, you said it right there, because really all that the candidate experience, really, whether they realize it or not, they're interviewing the other company, right? Hey, I just applied, but there was no email acknowledging my application. Or, oh, the person just they called and they didn't even say my name on the phone. Do I really want to talk to somebody who just has me as a number and not a name, right? Or
Right.
there's so many different things, and I mean, you couldn't have said it better. It's an interview on both sides.
Yeah. What are some of the hurdles that you've faced? Some of the things over the years that you've seen that, boy, those were tough situations from a recruiting standpoint or from a talent acquisition
Yeah,
position.
yeah. So, one of the things that comes to mind that I talk about from time to time is individual is when an individual doesn't recognize an organization, and or they don't recognize HamiltonDemo, and they're very apprehensive
Yeah.
about the opportunity, even if they've expressed interest, right? So I've had the opportunity to recruit for some attorneys,
Okay.
and this was pretty recent here in the last several months. And in that particular situation, several of the attorneys that had expressed interest in working for this big international firm, when they started talking to me, they wanted to know my name. They wanted to know how I got their name. They
Yeah.
would find me on LinkedIn while we were on the phone. They would ask me questions to verify who I was, almost to the point where it was an interrogation rather than an interview.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, so when I think about that, the employment brand is so important, right?
Yeah.
And HamiltonDemo is really, really trying to bring awareness through a lot of social activity, promotions, postings, etc., and building our employment brand as well. And it has truly helped us a lot. But I think that hurdle sometimes, the apprehension that some candidates may have, or they may have never dealt with a third party after applying to a job before,
Yeah.
right? So they're like, well, how do you fit into this? I'm sure you've heard of others mentioning that although you tell them I'm from this third party HamiltonDemo, they always think that you're still working with the company that you're trying to hire them on, right? They
Yeah.
think you're that employee. So that's usually what pops in my head.
What, from a process standpoint, the length, how do you coach the candidates through, hey, this isn't a quick, sometimes 30-day deal. Sometimes these can probably take several months, right? I mean, that's got to be a mental process for somebody going through this.
Yes, actually, I have a story, and it seems like it's a good ending to this story. But
Yeah.
I had an opportunity with a client to fill a role on the East Coast, and about a week into it, we identified somebody who was just exceeded expectations. Right?
Yeah.
He's a rock star. So this was in August, and at the time, this opportunity is in the construction industry. So needless to say, there's been a lot of
Oh yeah.
delays in construction. So they identified this guy, and a week turned to 2 weeks, 2 weeks turned to a month turned. So we're actually in December, and it looks like here in January they'll be able to give him an offer.
Wow.
And so there's been a lot of consistent follow up and touching base. And let me tell you, in this particular situation, we did everything the right way.
Yeah.
And the candidate was very open and understood everything that we explained to him, the delays and everything. And he is as motivated today to start as he was in August. So that example is kind of like a good ending to a story so far. We'll
Yeah.
wait till he actually gets on board. But yeah, there are several times where you speak to someone on Monday and you say, hey, the interview process will start in a week, and whatever happens during that time doesn't quite follow the process. I feel it's my job to kind of manage that on behalf of my clients,
Right.
and let's be honest, we're all human. I rather have somebody who's a little impatient and excited and wants to move on than somebody who's hard to get a hold of, right?
Yeah.
Right, that you have to chase down. I'd rather have that every day. So it does happen. I take that burden on to manage that on for both my client and the candidate.
Yeah. How has the pandemic affected the interview process? I know it's got to be totally different now with everything probably being just Zoom related, and how you work with not only your customer, the company, and the actual customer, the client.
Yeah, John. I mean, last year at this time I used Zoom like 2 or 3 times. It wasn't
Yeah.
right, and I'll tell you, everybody's used to it now.
Yeah.
So even those that aren't tech tech savvy, they've learned, and now they're prepared for Zoom meetings. So uh, more often, if not almost every time, there's going to be an initial Zoom call.
Yeah.
They'll have that initial interview. So that's lent itself to having things move a little quicker.
Yeah.
That help. And again, everybody's become comfortable with it.
Less expensive too.
Yeah. And you know, up until this point, to get someone on video to interview was it used to be something that caused people pause.
Yeah.
Right? This was the emerging technology where a lot of recruiters and talent acquisition professionals were trying to get more to that platform and get people comfortable with it, where you'd have people running out to their cars like during their work day to
Yeah.
be on an interview, and some just preferring not to do it at all, and everything in between. But now it really hasn't even become an issue as far as the video. interview. So I think that's really going to continue after the pandemic's over.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing like the eye test,
Right.
right? So if an example I use, if you're on a video interview and the person's driving through McDonald's ordering their food while he's on a
Yeah.
video interview, that's probably not a good match, right?
That's right.
Yeah, there's nothing like the eye test, and if you can have that eye test, uh, I think it always makes you feel a little bit better moving forward and connecting with the hiring manager or whoever else in the organization.
Yeah. How important is it for the candidates that you work with, especially at that executive level, to be able to tell their story? And I'm talking from a sales standpoint, because they are trying to sell themselves, to tell a story versus show all these results that they've accomplished.
Yeah, no, good question. Again, I think it goes back to coaching,
Yeah.
framing your story on LinkedIn, right? Not having a lot of distractions on your social media. So, for example, on Facebook, I post a lot of things for friends and family. I don't usually do anything out. I don't do political things,
Right.
right? Just keep so although others might not take offense to it or think of it in a negative way. That type of activity does project a story about you,
Right.
right? It's important, and I think it resonates in the interviewer
Yeah.
as well. So the coaching side's important, and a lot of people. It's not like they're interviewing all the time, right? I come across a lot of candidates who have had the same job for 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
They're rusty.
Yeah.
So again, the coaching is so important. Practicing. As a matter of fact, I tell my candidates, if ask your coach, ask a friend, practice. You can't practice enough. When my friends come to me and they're asking me for advice, I tell them the same thing, but I also say, hey, do yourself a favor and just accept any interview, because that interview is going to help you when you get to the interview that you really want to kill, right?
Yeah.
The one that you really want to close the deal on. You're going to get more comfortable. You're going to feel more confident in the way you're presenting yourself, and you're going to get used to the questions and the pace of the questions that are going to come at you,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think as many of those things that you can do to frame yourself in a good light is always beneficial.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. Okay, I've got one last question for you, but before we answer this last question, tell all the listeners where they can get a hold of HamiltonDemo, and what's the best place to get a hold of you and contact you and the organization.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. So I always have my phone on me,
Yep.
right? And I've had the same number for over 20 years. So you can call me at 513-257-9683, 513-257-9683. I answer my phone after 5 o'clock, before 8 o'clock in the morning, weekends. If I don't answer, I'm really good at calling back if you leave a message. Also, you can find us on the website, HamiltonDemo.com, www.HamiltonDemo.com. My contact information is there as well, with my email address, Yvan with a Y, YVAN at HamiltonDemo.com. And on LinkedIn, if you'd like to follow us, as I mentioned before, we're doing a lot of things to teach and show people what's going on in the space, all around diversity and recruiting. And yeah, you can follow us on LinkedIn.
Great. So all you listeners, get to the website, HamiltonDemo.com, and check out the website. Diversity, executive placement, executive search, diversity recruiting, and you also do project-based as well. So for those companies that are, may not they're doing a specific project, you're engaged in that as well. So
Yeah. So if there's a location opening, a store opening, if they're making sales expansion, um, growing their IT department, and they've got a time frame when to make all their hires, projects that include integrating with their applicant tracking system. Yeah, pretty much we'd love to hear anything from rec to term, whatever you have.
awesome. Last question. So I ask every guest this, and so if you've got, I call it a sales vitamin. In this case, it may be a recruiting vitamin. We're okay with that. And what would you tell that candidate out there, somebody that's, thinking about entering the job search? That is a thing right now. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people in the job market. What's one vitamin you'd leave with them today? Just one thing that's going to help them out.
Yeah. One thing that'll help them out. So, be yourself, right?
Yep.
One of the things when we're talking about coaching, being relaxed, being more confident in yourself. I think with recruiters, hiring managers, they're always trying to sniff out like what they can't hear.
Yeah.
Right? So be authentic, and I think that'll go a long way. Enthusiastically authentic, right? Don't try to be someone else that you're not,
Right.
because they will sniff that out. So enthusiastic and being authentic from the interview to talking to the recruiter, turn around whatever they ask for additional information. I think it'll serve everybody well.
Awesome. That's great. Great advice, man. It is so great to have you on today. Just a ton of sales and recruiting vitamins there from a sales executive and talent acquisition standpoint, but also just some great value information on diversity and hiring and how that helps a company and how it is such an important factor in today's business environment. I appreciate you spending time today.
Yeah, John, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I'd love to come back if you ever had the need. Had a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You bet.